How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf 31. Why not? Azoi. Okay. Daf 31 of Masechta Bava Basra. Masechta Sanhedrin. I'm starting to get a little bit nervous to the phone that I've been using to record Babylon Talmud for the past 5 years. The battery's starting to get a little schwach. I'm a little bit nervous, but let's see. Because these pages are long. It's not Bava Basra, half an hour a page. These pages are long now. I'm getting a little bit nervous that the phone won't last, but I think we should be fine. Anyways, what am I saying? Alright, where are we? So Chevra, for the next few days, the dafs are going to be somehow related to my traveling. I was basically traveling all day yesterday, and I was basically learning on the flights as much as I could. The second flight, they kept on turning off the lights, which makes it a little bit hard to learn. But I did manage to learn 2 daf and review 1 daf. Not bad. 3 daf on airplanes. In the first flight I was on, I was sitting next to Chassidish Yid. He was a very sweet man. And as he told me at the end, he was amazed at how I was able to learn on the flight the whole time. I said, look, I don't have much of a choice. You gotta keep up. I'm not recording the whole day. If I'm not recording, I didn't get into the whole recording, and I didn't tell him about Babylon Talmud. I'm not sure he would quite understand. Maybe he would. But anyways, there's no days off over here. If I'm flying a whole day, I'm not recording. Well, then I gotta learn. And I gotta learn an extra daf. I'll go upon him. So this is to say that for the next few days, the dafs are somehow related to traveling. Whether I did chazara on a plane, whether I learned the daf initially on the plane. So hopefully it will be all right. Masechta Sanhedrin. It's it's demanding Masechta Sanhedrin. More so than I anticipated. But it's good stuff. Masechta Sanhedrin. Here we go. We're going to start in Daf Lamed Amud Beis, about 5-6 lines from the bottom, or so. Amr Yehuda says, Yehuda, Eidos HaMakreshes Zoi es Zoi bebedikois. Oh, Ksher bedine momenis. Interesting. Okay, says Yehuda that when it comes to dine moment, so there's drishos and there's chakiros. Chakiros, drisos / bedikos, I believe are the same thing. So chakiros is the important stuff. Chakiros is the stuff that is necessary, that is to be able to make edus hazama that in order to make right, meaning such as the time and the place, betzim, where did it happen, what time of the day, what day of the week, what day of the month, etc. That's the stuff that the mamash have to get straight. The 2 witnesses have to get that right, because it's what's the word I'm thinking of, imperative maybe, for testimony to be able to be hazama, and in order for that to happen, we have to know for sure what time and in what place what they're testifying about happened. So that's for sure. If there's a contradiction there, forget it. The testimony is thrown in the trash. But if they contradict each other on sort of kind of more Facebook meta-y kind of things, we're going to get into right now exactly how Facebook meta-y, but kind of things that aren't directly connected to time and place, but more about what exactly happened. So we're going to see different views on what happens if there's a contradiction there. So Amar Yehuda says of Yehuda, Eidos HaMakreshes Zozo bebedikos. So if you have testimony, right? 2 witnesses, and they contradict each other bebedikos on sort of the on sort of the details of what happened, not related to time and place. Ksheira bedine momenis. So that is acceptable by dine momenis. Implication being not by dine nefashos, but by dine momenis. Amar Rava says, Rav Mistav Milsei Rav Yehuda So now says Rava, there's room for nuance there. There's room for nuance there. That it depends on what details there was a contradiction. I think this is why Sanhedrin takes so long. There's the details. There's a lot of details in Sanhedrin. I think maybe that's what. There's a lot of details in Sanhedrin. Are we talking about drishos? Are we talking about chakiros? Within the drishos, what kinds of drishos? Are we talking about dinei mamanis? Are we talking about dinei foshos? Mumchin, non-mumchin? Was it Dvar Mishnah? Was it Shikul Adas? As we're going to see in the pages coming up. There's a lot of details maybe in Sanhedrin. Maybe you have to go really slowly. There are these big pages too. But Sanhedrin's gewaldig. Hakoponim. And also, if I keep on interrupting myself, that also takes time. Amarav mistavim milsa do of Yehuda be echad omer be'arniki shchor ve'echad omer be'arniki levana aval echad omer mona shachor ve'echad omer mona lavan eimet starfin. So it says Rave, or back up a second, Rav Yehuda had said that by dinei mominis, if there is a stira among the witnesses by the drishos, by sort of the non-time and place related details, Rav Yehuda said that's acceptable by dinei mominis. Now, says Rava, there's more nuance there, and that nuance is, it depends which details, okay? If we're talking about, so for example, if we're talking about a loan, okay? So Shimon, oh man, this is distracting. There's a mirror behind me, and I'm distracting myself. 1 second, what do I do? Oh man, I can't take down the mirror. Let me maybe try to open that door so that the mirror is gone. Alright, hopefully that's better. Akoponim. So Rava says that there's room for nuance here, which is that, so for example, we're talking about a loan, okay? Shimon lent Ruvain a $100, a 100 zuz coin, okay? Shimon lent Ruvain a 100 zuz coin, okay? So, and now the witnesses who saw this, there's a disagreement, so it depends what the disagreement is about. If it's about was Shimon's wallet that he opened up to give the $100, the 100 zuz coin, was it black or was it white? Okay, that's kind of Facebook meta-y. But if we're talking about was the coin itself black or was the coin itself white, well, that's already getting into the heart of the matter. That's actually the coin that was lent. And there's a stira there regarding was the coin black, was the coin white? Well, that's already more significant, argues Rava, and that would be a stira that would throw away the testimony, because that's a stira on the core of the testimony. So again, Amar Rava says, "Of Mistava Milseit of Yehuda," I understand. I can get behind what Rav Yehuda says when it comes to a stira. If the disagreement between the witnesses, the discrepancy between the witnesses is about was Shimon's wallet black or white? Okay, fine. Not okay. If there's a discrepancy there, it's livable. We could live with that. But if one witness says that the actual coin that was lent was black and the other one says it was white, that's already ein mitzdarfin. We can't join together their testimony because that's already a discrepancy in the heart of the matter, in the heart of what actually happened, in the heart of this actual loan. Where am I? But now, frek the Gemara. Rav Yehuda said that this is specific to dinei mamanis, implying that by dinei nefashis, such an equivalent discrepancy would be problematic, right? Rav Yehuda is saying by dinei mamanis it's acceptable, by dinei nefashis it's unacceptable. But the equivalent of a black wallet versus a white wallet by dinei nefashis would be a problem. But Ve'amar Rav Chizde, Rav Chizde says, Echad omer b'sayif harago, ve'echad omer ba'ariron harago, ein ze nachon. So says Rav Chizde, look, if we're talking about a murder case, one witness says that the murder happened with a sword, and the other one happened with some kind of other sharp object. So ein nachon, right? The word nachon here comes from the pasuk, which says ki emes nachon adavar Right? What is? Do we have a pasuk? We say the Ma'akar Nafka. Where am I? The pasuk Ein Zeh Nocha Eines Mechuber. Listen to the Quran Nocha V'Hine Emes Nochon Adavar. V'Hine Emes Nochon Adavar. So meaning it's valid testimony. So if we're saying that there's a stira between the witnesses in terms of the weapon that was used, that's a problem. Ein Zeh Nochon. We can't say that it's valid. We cannot say that it's valid testimony. But But if one witness says that the murderer was wearing a white shirt, the other one says wearing a black shirt, all right, that's fine. Harei Zeh Nochon, it is acceptable. It's valid testimony. So it would sound like this concept would be equally valid for both Dinei Mamonos and Dinei Nefashos. By Dinei Mamonos was the wallet white, was the wallet black. By Dinei Nefashos was the shirt white, was the shirt black. These are more Facebook meta-y kind of things, like, secondary, once removed kind of things. It would seem like they are valid, but that those kinds of discrepancies are acceptable both by Dinei Mamonos and by Dinei Nefashos. And for the Gemara, Gavre Karamis, what's the big deal? Rav Yehuda said that by these discrepancies are only acceptable by Mamonos, but by Nefashos they are unacceptable. By Nefashos they're unacceptable according to Rav Yehuda. Rav Chizda, another Amora, similar generation to Rav Yehuda, disagrees and says that these discrepancies are acceptable both by Dinei Mamonos and by Dinei Nefashos. Okay, a machlokes between Rav Yehuda and Rav Chizda, that's acceptable. They can argue, and therefore it's not. It's not. Sure. They disagree, but it's not like, how could Rav Yehuda say this? But Rav Chizda disagrees. Yeah, sure. Rav Chizda disagrees. Okay, it's not a problem for Rav Yehuda. They can agree to disagree. Nardoi Amri. Now say the Nardaeans. Afilu echad omer mone shacher ve'echad omer mone loven. Says the Nardaeans that even in the event by Dinei Mamonos, where one witness says that the coin itself was black and the other says that the coin was white, mitztarfim, that's also okay. Frekti Gemara, come on, Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha. Why is that like Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha? What does Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha say? Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha's opinion, of course, is, I think we did that yesterday, right? Yeah. Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha, his opinion is that if one witness says that Shimon lent $1,000 to Reuven on Sunday, the other witness says that Shimon lent $1,000 to Reuven on Monday, those two witnesses could join together, even though they're talking about two separate loans. But at the end of the day, we have two witnesses essentially saying that Reuven owes Shimon $1,000. We said that that's fine. So even though they're testifying about two different loans, they could join together. So, and even though one's saying Sunday, one's saying Monday, it's okay. The principle is the same. Therefore, they could join together. So we're going to say that this is, so that Nardaeans are saying like Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha, that sure, one of them says white, one of them says black. At the end of the day, we have testimony that Reuven borrowed $1,000 from Shimon, and therefore he owes Shimon $1,000. So let's say that Nardai are like Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha. But the thing is, the thing is, in Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha's example, Reuven and Shimon, they're not contradicting each other. They're talking about two separate things. One, right. By Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha's case, one witness is testifying about a loan that took place on Sunday. The other witness is testifying about a loan that took place on Monday. They're not contradicting, they're just testifying about different things, but the things are both the same, and therefore we can say, look, at the end of the day, what we do know is that we have two witnesses attesting to the fact that Reuven owes Shimon $1,000. And therefore, nobody's claiming, right, meaning that we're pretty open about the fact that there are two different loans. But the point is that we could join together their testimony, join them together to say that Reuven owes Shimon $1,000. Here, however, they're contradicting each other. The two witnesses are saying, we both saw the same loan. One of them is saying that the coin was white, the other one was saying the coin was black about the same loan. They're actually contradicting each other. The coin was either white or black. One of them is right, one of them is wrong. And therefore, we can argue that Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha would say that over here, we wouldn't just say, yeah, but Reuven owes Shimon $1,000, right? Reuven owes Shimon a mana, or whatever it is. No, because we have the evidence itself to say that is contradictory. So therefore, we can't say that Nardoi are like Rabbi Shimon Korcho. Elu de Omer Kiyai Tana. Rather, Nardoi say like the following Tana. The Tana that we learned about. So Omer B'Shimon ben Elazar, Shimon ben Elazar lenechliku Beishami Beis Hillel. The Beishami and Beis Hillel agree. Al shtei kite edim. That if you have two separate groups of witnesses, and each group alone, each group individually, their testimony is in agreement, right? Al shtei kite edim. You have two separate groups. She'achas omer is one group says Masayim, ve'achas omer is Mana. You have one group of witnesses that say that Reuven owes Shimon 200 zuzis. The other group says that Reuven owes Shimon 100 zuzis. Sheish b'chlal Masayim Mana. That right. So within each group of witnesses, their testimony is consistent, whether it's they're testifying about 200 zuz or 100 zuz, each group is consistent. So we could say, look, and I guess that we're probably talking about the same day or whatever, because otherwise we could simply just say that they're talking about two separate loans. But I guess we're talking about the same loan, but each group is consistent within itself. So we could say, look, at the end of the day, what we do know is that Reuven owes Shimon at least 100 zuzes, and therefore that is what we'll go based on. Okay, the one group says 200 zuzes, the other group says 100 zuzes. Okay, so we know that Reuven owes Shimon at least 100 zuzes, and so that is what we'll say that Reuven is chayiv to Shimon. But where do they disagree? Al kas achas, when this is within one group of witnesses. Beis Shammai says that if one witness says 100 zuzes, and the other witness says 200 zuzes, Beis Shammai says, look, they're contradicting each other. We won't simply say, well, yeah, but at the end of the day, can't we agree that Reuven owes Shimon 100 zuzes? No. If one witness says 100 zuzes, the other witness says 200 zuzes, that's a contradiction. We must discard their testimony. Whereas Beis Hillel says, look, even though there is a contradiction between the two witnesses at the core of the matter, how much money was borrowed, nonetheless, Beis Hillel is willing to say that at the end of the day, look, one is saying 100 zuzes, the other one is saying 200 zuzes. What we know is that Reuven owes Shimon at least 100 zuzes, or we can say that we know that Reuven owes Shimon at least 100 zuzes. So Reuven owes Shimon 100 zuzes, right? Even though there's a contradiction between the witnesses about the details, we could look at their commonality, right? The common ground between the two witnesses, and therefore we would say that Nardoi are saying like Beis Hillel, that the Nardaeans say that one witness says that it was a black coin, the other one says it was a white coin. That we could look past that and say yes, but they both agree that Reuven owes Shimon one right, this coin 100 zuzes or whatever it is. Azoi. So therefore, Nardoi would hold like Shimon ben Elazar says that that's the opinion of Beis Hillel. Keilu Beis Hillel according to Shimon ben Elazar. Fine. Where am I? Now, in this scenario where echad omer chavesh shel yayin ve'echad omer chavesh shel shemen. Interesting. What if one witness says that Shimon lent Reuven a barrel of wine, and the other witness says Shimon lent Reuven a barrel of honey? Now the assumption is that honey is actually more valuable than wine. Interesting. Is it? Maybe Itaka is. How much do I pay for like a container of honey? I don't even know how much is in it. I don't know. How much do I pay? I mean, obviously it depends which wine. But I feel like wine can get way more expensive than honey. Kilu. In those like climate controlled storage facilities in Switzerland, you probably have extremely expensive bottles of wine. Do you have extremely expensive bottles of honey? I imagine not. But I don't know, how much do I pay for honey? I can't remember. It's not cheap. I think it might be like 30 something shekels for like not a large container. If I would get like the equivalent of a bottle of wine of honey, yeah, we might be talking about like I'd have to look, but maybe the equivalent is like 150 shekels, which that would be a nice bottle of wine. You can get a basic bottle of wine for Yeah, but again, the equivalent of that bottle, yeah. I'll call upon him, whatever it is. The assumption is that honey is more expensive than wine. So now the assumption is that honey is more expensive than wine. Now, okay. So now, Hava Uvda, there was such a case that actually happened where one witness said it was a barrel of wine, the other witness says it was a barrel of honey. Vasi the Kamer Reb Ami came before Reb Ami. Chive Reb Ami nishalum lechavisa de Chamer. And Reb Ami says, well, the common denominator is that a barrel of wine is less expensive than a barrel of honey. So we'll say that Reuven needs to pay Shimon, needs to give back a barrel of wine. It's the lesser expensive of the two. Migo chavisa de mishcha. Kilu, a barrel of wine is less than a barrel of. Oh wait, no. Why am I talking about honey? It's oil. Why did I think honey? Oil. Okay, but still, the assumption is that a barrel of wine is less than a barrel of shemen. Okay, so now I have to do my cheshbonis about oil. How much does oil cost these days? No, oil's less expensive than wine. Oil's less expensive than wine these days. Yeah, oil's less expensive than wine. I mean, again, it depends what kind of wine you're getting. But even good olive oil, I don't remember how much I pay. I usually get a few bottles. I can't remember how much I pay. But I don't know, I imagine it's probably not more than 40 or 50 shekels for a bottle of good olive oil, whereas a decent bottle of wine is going to be more than that. Anyway, so we say that Reuven needs to pay a barrel of wine, which is less expensive than a barrel of oil. Kiman, Reb Shimon ben Elazar. So are we going to say that this is like Reb Shimon ben Elazar, right? Because Beis Hillel had said, one of them says 100, one of them says 200. And we say, okay, well the common denominator is 100. But Emedav Reb Shimon ben Elazar, also Reb Shimon ben Elazar says, Eichad de yesh b'chal masayim mana. Kilu, Reb Shimon ben Elazar, by Beis Hillel's opinion, according to Reb Shimon ben Elazar, we're talking about 100 zuz, 200 zuz. They're both agreeing that we're talking about zuzes. The question is how many zuzes. But Kiyai Gavna, one saying it's a barrel of wine, one saying it's a barrel of oil. Those are literally two different items. Would Beis Hillel, according to Reb Shimon ben Elazar, say that is acceptable? We're talking about literally two different things. Literally apples and oranges, wine and oil. So Lotzricha L'Dmei. Well, actually, the case, however, wasn't talking about a barrel of wine and a barrel of oil. It was the value of a barrel of wine and the value of a barrel of oil. So it was actually talking about money. It wasn't talking about actual barrels. And therefore, so we're saying basically, whatever, 100 zuzes versus 200 zuzes, essentially. So you can make that kind of argument, say, yesh b'chal masayim mana. That's why Reb Ami says, pay the value of the wine. If one says that the loan happened on the upper balcony, the other one says that the loan happened on the lower balcony. Reb Chanina says that this taka happened. This case came before Rebbe, and Rebbe said, yeah, it's fine. One witness is saying that this loan took place on an upper balcony. The other witness is saying that this loan took place on a lower balcony, but they're both agreeing the value of the loan. So then it's that would be okay. As Rashi says, V'tzerif also in Reb Yoshua ben Karcha, like Reb Yoshua ben Karcha, the Tarvayu Mana Mechayve. Both witnesses are saying basically that Reuven owes Shimon 100 zuzes. Ve'af al gav demiskach shebedikos k'Rav Yehuda. And even though they're contradicting by the bedikos, was it this balcony, that balcony? But that's more of a Facebook meta kind of thing. Whereas they're both agreeing that Reuven owes Shimon 100 zuzes. And therefore, Reuven owes Shimon 100 zuzes. How do we know, like the Mishnah had said, how do we know that after the verdict, so if two judges said guilty, one of them said innocent, how do we know that Mr. Innocent should not go to the guilty party and say, by the way, you should know, I'm the guy who rooted for you, but what can I do? The other two guys were against you. Sorry, it worked out this way. But you should know I was for you. How do we know that when you leave the Bezdin, Lo Yomar, how do we know that let's say it was Reuven, Shimon, and Levi were the judges? Reuven and Shimon said guilty, Levi said innocent. How do we know that Levi shouldn't go to the party who just lost the case and say, look, I had said I rooted for you. I had said you're innocent, but Reuven and Shimon said you were guilty. What can I do? But Reuven and Shimon outnumbered me. Don't be a slanderer in your nation. That a person who walks around as a slanderer, he reveals secrets. I guess it's no good. There was a certain student who 22 years later revealed what was said in the Beis HaMedrash, and it was something nasty. Rabami threw him out of the Beis HaMedrash. He said, this guy, he reveals secrets that should not be revealed, and we have to get rid of him. He's a shmendrik. Okay, now we get to the last Mishnah of the Perek. Now we get to the last Mishnah of the Perek, and this is now going to, I guess, be an Indian that really, it's really going to continue, I think, into really the next Perek, and yeah, there's going to be a lot. Yeah, okay. Says the Mishnah, Kozman shemevi raya soser es adin. So says the Mishnah that, let's say, right, so we're talking about the case where Shimon lent Reuven $1,000, okay, and now Shimon is taking Reuven to court, and Reuven doesn't have, let's say a receipt or anything to support his argument that he does not owe $1,000. He doesn't have such documentation, so Bezdin, based on what's available, Bezdin says, okay, Reuven, you owe Shimon $1,000. So now, what happens if later on Reuven finds this document? Finds this receipt. So we're saying, Kolzman shemevi raya, at any time, right, that Reuven finds some evidence to prove his case, he can appeal. He can come back to Bezdin and say, look, there's new evidence that I found that I didn't have before, and when you convicted me, it was because I didn't have documentation. Here, I've found it. So, whenever he finds supporting evidence, he can come back to Bezdin and sort of make a new argument with this new information. Amrlo, if Bezdin had instructed Reuven, the borrower, that any documentation that you have to support your case, you have 30 days to present it before us, well then, look, if Bezdin gave him a window of 30 days to provide evidence, so he has that 30-day window to provide the evidence. After 30 days, the window is closed. Now, as you might be thinking, Reb Shimon Gamliel says, Reb Shimon Gamliel, Ma yaise zeh shaloi matzu b'soch shloshim yom matzu lachar shloshim. Reb Shimon Gamliel, however, says, wait, that's not really fair. I mean, you're telling him you have 30 days, but this evidence is beyond his control. Kilu, if he finds it on day 31, he's been rummaging everywhere for 30 days, and he finds it on day 31. He remembers, maybe I didn't check here, he finds it on day 31. I mean, if he had it within 30 days, he would have brought it. And says Reb Shimon Gamliel, Mayai says, what, I don't understand, what should he do? Shalom matzah b'soch shloshim, that he pushed it, he was looking everywhere, but within 30 days he didn't find it. Umatzah, and he finally found it, lachar shloshim yom, on day 31. So Reb Shimon Gamliel argues that he should be able to bring it whenever he finds it. Omar lo, have edim, v'omar ein edim, I think that there's taka, you can switch this, Omru lo. Basically, if the Bezdin says to Reuven, bring witnesses, v'omar ein li edim. Interesting. But then he says, I don't have witnesses. Omar ave raya v'omar ein li raya. They said to him, bring any kind of evidence. He says, I don't have any evidence. Ulachosman hevi raya umatza edim. But then later on, at a later point, he comes with witnesses. He comes with evidence. We disregard the witnesses. We disregard the evidence. Because he had initially said explicitly that he doesn't have witnesses, he doesn't have evidence, he cannot show up later contradicting what he said by bringing witnesses or evidence, we'll throw it away. Reb Shimon Gamliel says, Reb Shimon Gamliel, but wait, says Reb Shimon Gamliel, it's not his fault. He didn't know that that there was actually witnesses available. He didn't know at the time that he had evidence available, and then he found evidence that he could use. So Reb Shimon Gamliel once again argues that even though, yes, he initially said he has no witnesses, he has no evidence, but it's not his fault. He didn't know at the time. Later on, he found out that he does have witnesses, he does have evidence. He should be able to bring them, even though he says he doesn't, even though he initially said he doesn't have them. Now, however, in this case, even Reb Shimon Gamliel is not going to come to Reuven's defense. Rosh Mischayev Badin, if Reuven sees that things are not turning his way, and all of a sudden, V'amar Kivru Ploni Ufloni, all of a sudden, at the last minute, he turns to the people in the in the court, his friends that are over there that came to the case, and he says, "Hey, you too, come testify for me. Kirvu ploni ufloni v'yiduni, come, they're going to testify on my behalf." Or he pulls some kind of last minute evidence out of his belt. How is it? Okay, that's irrelevant. Kilu, Mamash, he sees at the last minute that things are not going his way, and all of a sudden, a last ditch effort, he says, "Hey, you two, come testify for me." Or he pulls out some evidence that he could have pulled out the whole time, and he didn't until now. So we don't, that even Reb Shimon Gamliel is not going to come and try to, offer support there. That's problematic. Okay. Now, says the Gemara. Rabbi Bar Ravuna says Rabbi Bar Ravuna halacha Reb Shimon ben Gamliel. So says Rabbi Bar Ravuna that the halacha is like Reb Shimon ben Gamliel in the Reisha. Well, there's actually like 4 cases in the Mishnah, right? The first the Mishnah says that at any time you could bring supporting evidence. Then there's the case of the 30-day window. Then there's the case where Reuven says, "I don't have anything," but then he comes up with stuff. And then there's the case of the last ditch effort. But anyways, in the case of the 30-day window, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says, look, if he finds the evidence after the fact, he can bring it after the fact. What can he do? He couldn't find it before it. So it says, Rabbi Bar Ravuna, the halacha is like Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, that if he finds evidence after the windows, after the declared window is shut, he could still bring it because it's not his fault that he couldn't find it beforehand. Rabbi Bar Ravuna, ain halacha k'divrei chachamim. Rabbi Bar Ravuna then additionally says, and the halacha is not like the chachamim. Pshita. Yeah, isn't that obvious? Look, I mean, if Rabbi Bar Ravuna said that the halacha is like Reb Shimon Gamliel, then obviously it's not like his Bar Plukta. It's obviously not like the Chacham. Yeah, but I may have thought, look, as we know, Yochid v'Rab Malachi Kirabim. So therefore, I may have thought that, sure, maybe what Rabbi Bar Ravuna is saying is that the halacha is like Reb Shimon Gamliel lichatchila, but b'diavad, if you did like the Chachamim, like the majority opinion, and you discarded the evidence after 30 days, maybe b'diavad it works. At the end of the day, you're doing like the Chachamim, like the majority opinion. Maybe b'diavad will keep it. Kamash Milan the Ovid me'adrinon later. No, even b'diavad, even if he did like the Chachamim, adrinon, we say no. The halacha is like Reb Shimon Gamliel. It is not like the Chachamim. And if he brings evidence after 30 days, we will accept it. And if we don't accept it, we will go back and accept it, like Reb Shimon ben Gamliel. Amar lo, ave'edim chulei, Amar Reb Shimon chulei, Reb Shimon Gamliel chulei. If the Bezdin instructed Reuven, or said, so they said, right, bring witnesses, bring evidence. He says, I have no witnesses, I have no evidence. And then all of a sudden he finds them. Amar Rabbi Ravuna, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, halacha k'divrei chacham, that halacha is like the chacham. Amar Rabbi Ravuna, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, ein halacha k'Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, that halacha is not like Reb Shimon ben Gamliel. So in this case, Rabbi Ravuna is saying that the halacha is like the chachamim. that once he says, I have no witnesses, I have no evidence, if he later brings witnesses or brings evidence, we disregard it. And in this case, says Rabbi Bar Huna, the halacha is like the Chachamim. It is not like Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, who says, well, what can he do that he didn't know at the time that he had these things? No, we don't pass like Rabbi Shimon Gamliel here. Pshita. This is obvious. That once Rabbi Bar Huna says that the halacha is like the Chachamim, I know Memele that halacha is like Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, and in this case even more so because Rabbi Shimon Gamliel is a das yochid. Kilu. The reason why in the first time when Rabbi Bar Huna said that the halacha is like Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, it's not like the Chachamim, we said, well, we thought maybe b'diavad, since you're passing like the Rabbim, like the majority opinion, maybe it works. But over here, you're saying the halacha is like the majority opinion. Well, then obviously then the minority opinion would not work. It's a das yochid. We're saying we're passing like the Rabbim, we don't passing like the das yochid, right? Like there's no reason I would have no havamina to passing like the das yochid. Therefore, why do I need to explicitly say that the halacha is not like Rabbi Shimon Gamliel? Hakam Ajmalon is coming to teach the Bahi in the halacha Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. What Rabbi Bar Huna is saying in the name of Rabbi Yochanan is that only in this case the halacha is not like Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. Habechulu halacha Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. But in every other case, the halacha Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. Let's go weiter. Lafuke mi'adam Rabbi Bar Huna Rabbi Yochanan, to the exclusion of that which Rabbi Bar Huna says in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, which we've seen many times before. That says Rabbi Bar Chana in Rabbi Yochanan that whenever, we've seen this many times, whenever Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel appears in a Mishnah, we always paskin like him, except for three exceptions. The third one, Raya Achrona, is the Mishnah, is our Mishnah, right? The Raya Rishona, right, is the 30-day window. There we paskin like Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, but the Raya Achrona is the case when he says, I have no witnesses, I have no evidence, and then he finds witnesses, and then he brings witnesses, he brings evidence. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says we can trust it. There we don't paskin like Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. And what Rabbi Bar Huna is saying is that there we don't paskin like Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, but every other case, even by Arev Vitzidon, every other case we paskin like Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. Only in this case we don't paskin like Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. Every other case, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel is his opinions in the Mishnah, we will always paskin like Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, to the exclusion of what Rabbi Bar Chana says in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, which is that there's three cases where we don't paskin. There are three exceptions. There are three places where we don't paskin like Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. Rabbi Bar Huna disagrees and says this is the only case where we don't paskin like Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. Okay. How Yenuka de Tavu Ledino Kamid Rav Nachman. There was a yosim. There was a yosim that they took to court before Rav Nachman. Amle Islach Saidei, and Rav Nachman says, Yingel, do you have witnesses? Amle Lo. He says, no, I don't have. Islach Raya, do you have evidence? Amle Lo. The Yingel says nit. I don't, right? Meaning they're coming to claim, right? Someone is coming to claim from the father's estate. And the Yosim says, look, I don't know about my father's affairs. So Chive Rav Nachman, look, at the end of the day, Rav Nachman says, you have to pay the claim from the estate because at the end of the day, we're lacking evidence in support. Havakabachi v'azil, and then this Yosim was crying. Shaminu hanach inshe, and people heard about what happened. Heard about this scenario. We have a Yosim who is being forced to pay. He didn't have any evidence to support himself, and he's crying. So Amrulay, and people heard about it, and they say, we know about your father's dealings, and they come to his support. So now, here's a scenario where this Yosim said, I don't have any evidence. I don't have any witnesses. But then now, people are stepping up and bringing evidence, bringing witnesses. So Rav Nachman, so it says Rav Nachman, okay, this testimony, these witnesses are acceptable. Because here, even the Chachamim would say that they are acceptable. Because we're talking about a Yosim saying, I don't have witnesses, I don't have evidence about my father's dealings. A Yosim doesn't necessarily know all the intricacies of his father's dealings, and therefore, when he says that I don't have evidence, but then later on others who know the dealings of his father, come and say, oh yeah, we could provide evidence. Even the Chachamim would say in that case, this evidence is acceptable. These witnesses are acceptable. There was a woman who was serving as a third party. Okay, Shimon lent $1,000 to Reuven. Okay, Shimon lent $1,000 to Reuven, and Reuven and Shimon trusted this woman as a third party to hold on to the document. The document saying that Reuven owes Shimon $1,000. So there's this woman who has this document. Amra Yodaina ba yishtar de priu. I amended some of the words. I dropped a word, changed the word, but okay. There's different ways to read it. This is the best way to read it for me, right? So she says, look, Yodaina ba yishtar de priu. She says, I know that this document is paid. So basically, she has a document that says that Reuven owes Shimon $1,000, but she says, look, I know that Reuven already paid Shimon the $1,000. Hemdi Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman believed her. Amalei Rav Nachman. So Rav says to Rav Nachman, Kiman, ki Rebbe, why are you believing her? Is it like Rebbe, the Omar Osius Niknis b'Mesira? Or is it like Rebbe, whose opinion is that letters, that contents of a document can be acquired by simply transferring them, i.e., when the document was given to her, she now becomes the owner of the document, and she can say whatever she wants about the document, including that it's already been paid. On my lay, Rav Nachman says, that's not necessarily what's going on here. Shiny Yochel, what's different, what's unique here is the Iboya Kalte. Look, she's saying that the document, that the loan's already been paid. She could have just burnt up the document, and it doesn't exist anymore, and then there would be nothing to take to court. So, Keilu, the fact that she, if she was lying, and if she, if the document wasn't paid, and she's just saying it's paid, well, then she could just burn the evidence. But she's showing up, saying, look, yes, there's a document, but it's been paid, so we can believe her. Those who say, lo emne Rav Nachman. Those who say that what happened was actually Rav Nachman did not believe her. So she said, here's the document, but it's been paid. Rav Nachman didn't believe her. Amalei Rav Nachman, to which Rav says to Rav Nachman, Viha Ibaya Kalte, but shouldn't we believe her? Because if she was lying, and the document wasn't paid, but she was saying it's paid, she could have just burnt it. But she's showing up with the document saying it was paid. Shouldn't we believe her? Well, came this Chazik bebeidina Ibaya Kalte lo amrinan. Yes, but since this is a document that Bezdin wrote a handpick on, Bezdin signed off on it and validated the document. So because it was a validated document, an extra layer of validity to it, a validation to it, lo amrinon. So Ibaya Kalte lo amrinon. We're not going to say, yeah, but she could have burnt it there. Should we believe her? No. I mean, it's her word versus a validated document by Bezdin. So even though, in principle, we would like to believe her, but her word is not going to, and we could say what? Oh my, that was weird. I saw this word and I'm just about to say it. But anyways, we could say migo, whatever. She could have burnt it, but not that. That migo is not strong enough. It's almost like migo b'makom edim, right? I think that was the thing, right? Migo b'makom edim, akoponim. Because it's a validated document, we don't trust her here. Eisvei Rav Nachman, Rav brings a brisa against Rav Nachman, simpon, a receipt. Sheish olav edim, that there are witnesses signed on the receipt. Yiskayim bichol samov, so we can validate the receipt with its witnesses, right? So if there's, Reuven has a receipt that he's already paid back Shimon, and there are witnesses on the receipt. Okay, let's validate the signatures of the witnesses, and we consider the loan paid. Ain olav edim, but if there are no witnesses on the receipt, but it comes out of the hands of a third party, i.e., let's say this woman who's saying that here's this receipt, i.e., the loan has been paid. Or the receipt is written on the bottom of the document, meaning Shimon has a document that says that Reuven owes him $1,000, but on that document that Shimon has, it's written underneath the signatures that Reuven already paid back the document. Now, Shimon has the document. Shimon, the lender, would only allow it to be written, a receipt to be written on his document if it was actually paid. So the fact that Shimon is in possession of a document that on the one hand says that Reuben owes him $1,000, but on the other hand, also says that it's been paid, Shimon would have only allowed that to be written if it was in fact true, and therefore kosher in both cases, whether it is coming from a third party or whether the receipt was written on the document itself. In both cases, it's a valid receipt. Alma shlish mehemen, so we see that a third party is believed, and therefore, in this case, when she says that it's been paid, she should be believed. Tufta to Rav Nachman tufta, right? Because meaning in the case of this receipt that's coming from the third party, there's no witnesses on it. She's literally just saying, "Here's a receipt." I.e., she's saying, or the third party here is saying the loan has been paid. So we believe the third party. So therefore, Rav Nachman says, look, we have a brisa saying that the third party is believed. We should be able to believe her that Reuben already paid back Shimon. So tufta to Rav Nachman tufta. So if according to this version that Rav Nachman didn't believe her, we have a kasha on that from this brisa that a third party should be believed that the loan has been paid. When Rav Dimi came from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, he said in the name of Rabbi Yechanan, Le'ela mevi raya v'soser. Okay, Reuven could always bring evidence to appeal the verdict. He can always bring new evidence. Ad she'istatim tainosav, until he says, that's it, I have no more claims. Once he says, I have no more witnesses, I have no more evidence, then he can't bring anything new. Okay, that sounds like the Chachamim said, right? The Chachamim said that once he says, I have no more witnesses, I have no more evidence, if he comes up with witnesses or evidence later on, we do not trust it. It sounds like the Chachamim. V'yomar, and then continues Rav Dimi, the name of Yochanan, and he says, Kirvu ploni uploni. That was the next case in the Mishnah. That, right, where, and as a last ditch effort, he says, hey, you two who have been here the whole time, all of a sudden I want you to come and testify on my behalf. There we don't trust him, implying that in the case, however, when he said that he has no more evidence but then brings witnesses, he would be trusted. That sounds like Reb Shimon ben Gamliel. So Kilu, Vaiduni testify on my behalf. Hagufa kasha, this is inherently contradictory. On the one hand, Omar, on the one hand, Omart Yistatim Tainoisov. On the one hand, we said that where he says, I have no more evidence, I have no more witnesses, at that point he can no longer bring evidence or witnesses. That's on the Rabbanan. That's the Rabbanan who said that once he says he has no more witnesses, he has no more evidence, he can no longer bring them. But then you said, Kirvu ish ploni ufloni v'ha'iduni. But then you said that specifically if he says, okay, you and you who have been here the whole time, come and testify on my behalf, that's a problem. Son of Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, that sounds like Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, who would say that however, in the case of, I have no more witnesses, I have no more evidence, and then he brings that evidence, in that case, it would still be valid. So, is it like the Chachamim, or is it like Rabbi Shimon Gamliel? If you're going to say, no, this is all according to Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, and it's an explanation, my achi statim tanos, of what does it mean until his claims are closed, achi yomar kirvu ploni ufloni, i.e., only once he says, you two come and testify on my behalf, that's a problem. But otherwise, we would accept the testimony, v'eduni, and testify for me. But Rabbi Bar Chana says in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, and this is Rav Dimi in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Kol makom sheshana Rabbi Shimon Gamliel b'mishnaseinu halacha k'moso chutz me'or v'tzidon v'raya achrona. But Rabbi Yochanan says that while we, as a rule, paskin like Rabbi Shimon Gamliel when he appears in Mishnayos, this is one of the exceptions where we don't paskin like Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. So we can't say that Rav Dimi is saying in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that the halacha is like Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. And that only when he says, hey, you two have been here the whole time, come and testify for me, that's a problem. But otherwise, he could always bring evidence. Even after he says, I don't have any more witnesses, I don't have any more testimony, evidence. My brain is starting to get lost. But anyways, so basically, we can't say that the statement of Rav Dimi Amar Rabbi Yochanan is all Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, because after all, we know that Reb Yochanan's opinion is that the halacha is not like Reb Shimon Gamliel over here. Elo ki asu Reb Shmuel bar Yehuda Reb Yochanan. Rather, when Reb Shmuel bar Yehuda came, he said the name of Reb Yochanan. Le'olam mevi raya v'soser. You can always bring witnesses. You can always bring evidence. You can always bring evidence to appeal. Until Reuven closes his arguments v'yomru and say v'yomrulo, and they say to him, have edim, bring witnesses. V'omer ein li edim, and he says, I don't have witnesses. Have raya, bring evidence. V'omer ein li raya, and he says, I don't have evidence. At that point, he's done, like the Chachamim. However, but what if, so if I understand this correctly, of course I was doing this on the airplane, I hope I understand this correctly, but if he says I have no witnesses, and I have no more evidence, but all of a sudden witnesses come from overseas, or a sack full of his father's documents, i.e. evidence that he didn't have until now, all of a sudden comes from a third party, then he can still bring evidence to the contrary. It sounds almost like the case of the Yosim who came before Rav Nachman, and the Yosim didn't know about the dealings of his father, and Rav Nachman ruled against him, but then all of a sudden people who did know about the dealings of his father came, and we said, okay, in this case even the Chacham would agree that we would accept this evidence or this testimony. So it sounds like, if I understand correctly, it's a similar thing over here. Even though he said, I don't have witnesses, I don't have evidence, but all of a sudden, kind of from left field, witnesses came from overseas, or all of a sudden somebody who had a trove of his father's documents, showed up. So in that case, we would be able to believe, we would accept this newly emergent evidence. Because when Rav Dimi came from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, Amar Rav Yechanan, he says to Rav Yechanan, Atokef es chavero bedin. So if you have one of the litigants is being very aggressive. One of them says, let's stay here and let's go to the court here. The other one says, no, I want to travel to where there is a better Bezdin, where there's more Talmidei Chacham. The hope being that this aggressive litigant will be less aggressive when they are in the presence of great rabbis. Kofin also we force this aggressive litigant to go to the more respected Bezdin and be tried there. Omar, the fun of Rabbi Elazar. Wait, what? Where am I? What? Okay. Omar, the fun of Rabbi Elazar. What? Omar, the fun of Rabbi Elazar. Rebbe Mishanosha b'chaver mana yotzi mana. Wait, what? Did I? Wait, 1 second. I think it's a combination of my brain starting to turn off. 1 second. Okay, did I skip that word earlier when I was learning it? I don't know. Anyways, Omar, the fun of Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Elazar says, Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi. Oh, so I guess that this is probably Rabbi Elazar speaking to Rabbi Yochanan, because that makes sense. Rabbi Elazar is referring to Rabbi Yochanan as his Rabbi. Mishanosha b'chaver mana yotzi mana almana. I don't understand. We're saying that we're going to force, let's say, the lender to have to travel now to the base Havad. I understand. Shimon, the lender, lent 100 zuzes to Reuven. Now he's trying to recover them. And now we're going to say, oh, you have to go to this other bezdin in some other place. So he's going to spend 100 zuzes in order to claim 100 zuzes to get back? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. No, we force the case to happen where we are so that Shimon can get back his 100 zuzes without having to spend money in order to reclaim it. It was also stated, Amr of Safra, if you have two people that are being aggressive in court, one of them says, let's stay here and go to court. The other one says, no, let's travel to a place with a more respected bezdin. We force the case to be adjudicated where they are. And if they want to clarify something from the more respected court, okay, so write a letter and send it. Ve'im Omar kisvu usnuli me'eze tam dantuni. And if one of the parties want to know, probably the guilty party wants to know, hey, how come you paskin this way? Okay, so they'll write down the rationale and they'll give him the rationale. Also a yavam and a yavama, right? By yavamas, if you want to do chalitza, so she follows him to the bezdin that he wants to go to. Adkama, how far does she have to travel with him? Amr Ami says with Ami, afilimi Tiberia to Tzipori, even from Tiberia to Tzipori. Amr of Kahana says of Kahana, I don't think that's super far away from each other, but says Rashi, Afal Pisha Yeshivas Tiberia Gedola Mishal Tzipori. Halich Achar of the Tzipori. Even though I assume when it's saying the Yeshivas Tiberia, I assume it's talking about the yeshiva in Tiberia, unless it's talking about the size of the city, so this kind of yeshuv of Tiberia. I don't know, but even though Tiberia is greater than Tzipori, still she would follow the Yavam to Tzipori. Rav Kahana, Ma'ikra. Rav Kahana says, what's the proof from the pasuk? V'kar ulo ziknei iro v'lo ziknei iro. Right, it says that the elders of his city call out to him, not the elders of her city, but the elders of his city. Amar Meimar says, Meimar Yochsa Kofin Oso V'yelech L'makom Avad. Says a Meimar that the halacha is that we force him and we go to the place of the better bezdin. Amar Rabashi La Meimar, but Rabashi says Ta Meimar V'Amar Reb Elazar Kofin Oso V'dam Be'iro. But what about Reb Elazar who says that we force him and we don't go to the Beis Havad? We judge where you are. Okay, this is the important thing. So I think, if I understand correctly, basically the concept here is it depends who is doing the forcing. If it is the lender who's trying to retrieve his money, and it is the lender who is saying, "Hey, I want to go to this better bezdin, and let's have this case there." So Eved Lo V'Lish Malva, look, a borrower has the lower hand. He's an Eved to the borrower is an Eved to the lender, and therefore, if the lender says, "I want to travel to this place, it's a better bezdin, and I want to be, and we'll go to court there," the Love has no choice; he must go. But if it's the Love, if it's the borrower who says, "I want to go to this better court," the lender could put his foot down and say, "No, this is crazy. I'm not spending money to travel someplace in order to get my money back." He says, "No. We're going to stay right over here." So it depends. Who's making the demand. If it is the lender making the demand, beseder. If it's the borrower making the demand, not beseder. Shalchu le'lemar ukva. This is such a strange. It's hard to kind of read this little chunk, but I think I know how to read it now. Shalchu le'lemar ukva. They sent to Mar Ukva. So they sent from Eretz Yisrael, from Tiberia in Eretz Yisrael, to Mar Ukva, who was in Bavel. It's a little bit of a tricky passage because there's a lot of confusing stuff here. Shalchu le'lemar Ukva. They sent from Eretz Yisrael, from Tiberia to Mar Ukva, who was in Bavel. L'dzivle kvar bisya, and they wrote to Mar Ukva, to the one whose face radiates. Who radiates like the son of Bisya. There's a few explanations that Rashi gives, but let's assume that it's talking about Moshe, who was raised by Bisya. Shlam, peace. Ukva Nabavli. Now this is confusing because it's not a reference to Mar Ukva. They are writing in their letter to Mar Ukva that there was somebody named Ukva Nabavli, and even though he's called Ukva Nabavli, he's actually in Eretz Yisrael, also adding to the confusion. So they write a letter from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, to Mar Ukva, and they say, here in Tiberia, there is a fellow by the name of Ukva Nabavli. Kabel Kadmona, and he was crying in front of us, he was complaining in front of us in Eretz Yisrael, that Yirmiyah Achi Hever Olai Esaderech. There's different explanations in Rashi, but we could say that basically he's sending, so from Eretz Yisrael, they're sending to Bavel, that Ukva Nabavli is complaining to us that Yirmiyah, who lives in Bavel, castrated him, and he wants justice. Ve'imrulo hisiu ve'yire pnenu b'Tiberia, and therefore in the letter they're recommending to Mar Ukva that Imrulo say to Yirmiyah, who's in Babylonia, hisi'u v'yira penenu b'Tveria, that hisi'u, and force him to come to us in Tiberia. So speak to him and tell him to come to us to Tiberia. Hagufa kasha, this is inherently contradictory. On the one hand, Amart Imrulo, on the one hand, in the letter they're saying, speak to him, Ama Dainua Atun, so we're saying, okay, you guys speak to him in Bavel, but then, Isi'u v'yir paninu b'Tveria, you're saying, send him to us in Tiberia, Ama Shadru Acha, so meaning send him here, don't judge, you will judge. So is it Imrulo, is it you take care of it, or is it send him to us and we'll take care of it? Halachi Amri, what they're saying is, Imrule Dainu Atun, what they're saying is, okay, you judge, Itzais, and if he listens to you in Bavel, great. Vilo, Hisuvia Peninu B'Tveria, if not, send him to us. Rav Ashi Omer says, Rav Ashi, Dine Knosos Hava, says Rav Ashi was a case of fines, Uve Bavel Lo Dainu, Dine Knosos, and in Bavel, as we have learned, I believe, they do not judge cases of fines in Bavel, and therefore they were saying, send him to us in Tiberia, and we will judge him because it's a case of fines. And the reason why they sent to Mar Ukva and said, Imrulo, speak to him, was just to give proper respect to Mar Ukva, but the fact of the matter is, Yirmiyah would have to be sent to Tiberia in order to be judged for a case of fines. Hadron Olach Zebora, we'll come back to Zebora. Wow. I think that this stuff was over an hour, I think. These are very demanding dafs. That was, however, a great parak Zebora, a very demanding parak, but also a very good parak about judging and how judging cases works. We're going to continue with this in the next parak of Echad Dinim Ominous. We talked about a lot of stuff on this stuff. We talked about where there are contradictions by the drishos, by kind of the questions about the details of the case. We had different opinions there. Maybe there are distinctions between which details. We're talking about the wallet, we're talking about the money. Are there distinctions between Dina Momnis, Dina Nefashis? We saw the opinion of Nardoi and Reb Shimon Elazar and Reb Beis Hillel, who says that even if there are contradictions with the core of the evidence, that could also be okay if there's agreement about the amount. So at least, or common denominators. We came to we talked about appeals by Dina Momnis and new evidence, and what scenarios can we believe new evidence? Can we not believe new evidence? The concept of whoever we have Reb Shimon Gamliel in a Mishnah, the halacha is like him. And that came up. Lots of interesting things. Tomorrow we're going to start the parak of Echad Dinim Ominous. Peace out.